What's going on, y'all? We're still processing what took place during the NBA draft this past week, and one of the huge talking points, definitely during the broadcast with Stephen A. Smith, local New York native, was the Knicks trading their 11th pick, completely trading out of the draft for three protected firsts from OKC. And, obviously, if you watched it, Stephen A. Smith was devastated by this decision. No matter what happened after that, he somehow found some way to bring it back to the Knicks and how they are coming out of this draft with zero, or at least the first round, coming out with zero players. Now, they did draft Trevor Keels from Duke University in the second round, so they are coming out with a player. And I think there's a lot of confusion surrounding what direction the Knicks are going in. It seems like the kind of consensus, at least with some of the transactions they made. Now, they traded Kemba Walker to Detroit along with Jalen Duren, basically to offload that Kemba contract. And so, in kind of a three-way trade with Charlotte with the 13th pick. It's a whole mess, but generally that's the gist. And so it seems like the idea is that they're clearing cap space to sign or at least make a run at Jalen Brunson. They've already now offered his father a job with the organization. Leon Rose has ties to Jalen Brunson from his days as an agent. So it all seems like, all right, we're going to make, this signing for Jalen Brunson. But here's the thing for me, when you look at the construction of their roster, you look at kind of their general timeline, and I think the reason for this confusion is they have two very different kind of player phases here. So when you look at, you could really make a starting five with each of them. You look at Derrick Rose, you look at Alec Burks, Evan Fournier, Julius Randle, Nerlens Noel. Okay, all players probably in the, back half of their careers, more or less, if not, Julius Randle, you could argue peaked the year before, whatever. And then you have, quickly Quentin Grimes, RJ Barrett, Obi Toppin, and then Mitchell Robinson is now an unrestricted free agent. Those guys all in their early 20s. And so, yeah, is this team rebuilding or are they trying to compete? Because they made the playoffs, 2 years ago and then extended that kind of whole roster, thinking, I guess, make another run at it. This year was pretty disappointing from every aspect. They traded for Cam Reddish. You can throw him in there with all those younger guys, but he hasn't played much. Tibbs apparently refuses to play younger guys. And so we have this disconnect between the front office and the head coach in terms of what direction we're going in terms of developing people. And so that leaves a ton of questions because the move to trade out of 11 for more future firsts, and it's from Detroit, Washington, and Denver, makes you think, all right, maybe they're planning for a bigger future further down the road. But this kind of like maneuvering every decision to make room for Jalen Brunson seems like, okay, we're trying to win to get a good player now. But, Jalen Brunson's in his mid-20s, and so he's not going to make you jump from, a lottery team to a playoff team. And he's also not going to be this young guy who has like a high ceiling ahead of him. I think we've seen a lot of what Jalen Brunson can bring, which is a lot. I mean, he's proven now that he can be a great point guard in the NBA despite being a little bit undersized. And so he's solid, yeah, but he's not someone you're going to try and, you envision your whole team around necessarily. So, maybe he's the first domino, and then they try and sell off the parts of Fournier and Burks and maybe Derrick Rose and Julius Randle. Whether you can get any value out of those guys remains to be seen. The problem is Fournier's contract is so long, you're going to be committing to him for a while. He's really not as bad as I think some people think in terms of he shot the ball really well from three. And so I think he can be an asset for, a winning team. I don't think he's someone that is like a Davis Bertans type that is so one-dimensional that it's just really hard, and with a really bad contract, to play him. I don't think Fournier's that bad. I think you can move him. So then you think, all right, we'll bring in Brunson, try and kind of trade off some of the older guys. But then you have Tibbs, who is this kind of, not someone who seems committed to kind of a rebuild. And you hear they're shopping Cam Reddish, who is a young player that they gave up a first for, who I guess doesn't fit in with what Tibbs wants to do, despite being, relatively kind of defensive-minded guy. So not sure what to do with that information. And you would think if the Knicks were trying to kind of play long-term, they would have kept the 11. They could have kept Duren. I mean, maybe they're negotiating to keep Mitchell Robinson, maybe not, but you could have just let him walk and get a cheaper option in Duren, and he can probably do about what Mitchell Robinson can do. Robinson's a pretty good shot blocker, not the best rebounder, so I wouldn't think you would lose a ton just swapping those guys out and letting someone else pay Mitchell Robinson. So it's frustrating, but I think it's kind of like with Portland, where Portland also want to rebuild around Dame but don't have a ton of pieces, but they make that Jeremy Grant trade where they basically give up, a future first from Milwaukee, which will probably be in the late first round. And you're like, okay, maybe we're building something here. Now they added Sharp, and you feel a lot better about it. And the Knicks could be, 2 to 3 moves away from feeling a lot better about this roster. They didn't help Cam Reddish's trade value by basically not playing him upon arriving. So not sure what they're going to get from him. They're obviously been rumored around like Miles Turner, Malcolm Brogdon, Kyrie Irving, maybe. Not that he's really going to help them, I don't think, in terms of trying to win. But in my opinion, I think the Knicks should really try and build around that younger core quickly. Barrett, Reddish, Obi Toppin, and try and sell out those other parts, get as many draft assets as you can, because you're not going to compete in the East for a while. Okay, Milwaukee's going to be good, Boston, Philly, Miami. The Knicks are not, and you can even throw Atlanta in there. You can throw in, Charlotte's going to probably be in the mix. Like the Knicks, Toronto, the Knicks are not going to be there this year. So you might as well try and build up your assets, draft capital, and go from there. Take this year off. There's some great prospects in next year's draft. Develop your guys. If you have to fire Tibbs, fire Tibbs. Get a younger guy who's willing to kind of commit long-term to this team and not just be focused on winning now. Sign Brunson, sure. I don't know if he'll really move the needle, but I probably wouldn't. But if you're really gung-ho about it, fair enough, bring him in. Stay away from Kyrie Irving and see what you can do with this young team. There's no pressure now. I don't think there's any expectations now for this Knicks team to do anything. So I think this is the perfect time. Take a back seat, develop your guys, and kind of build for the next 5 years instead of just the next one. All right? That's my take on it. Feel free, as Knicks fans, I'm sure you're frustrated. What would you do in this situation if you're Leon Rose? Feel free to let me know. I'd love to hear what you have to say. But for now, take it easy. Take care of yourselves. And I'll see you next time.